She ruled in armor, defied a king, and never stopped calling herself queen. This is not the Catherine of Aragon you were taught in school. Catherine of Aragon, often remembered as merely the first wife of Henry VIII, an obstacle he cast aside in pursuit of Anne Boleyn. But history has done her a disservice. Today, we uncover the remarkable story of a queen who was not only intelligent and deeply principled, but who also ruled, fought, and defied a king. Born in 1485, the same year the Tudor dynasty began, Catherine was the youngest daughter of Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, the famed Catholic monarchs who united Spain and funded Columbus's voyage to the New World. Catherine grew up in the Alhambra Palace in Granada, a city freshly reclaimed from centuries of Moorish rule. There, she was steeped in classical education. She could read Latin and spoke Spanish, French, and later English. Her mother made sure she was trained not just in courtly manners, but in statecraft and strategy. She wasn't a passive princess. Her parents raised her to be a ruler. At just 3 years old, Catherine was betrothed to Prince Arthur, the heir to the English throne. Their marriage in November 1501 at Old St. Paul's Cathedral, both aged 15, was a grand political alliance meant to cement peace between England and Spain. But fate intervened. Arthur died from an unknown illness just 5 months later. The question that followed would haunt Catherine for the rest of her life. Was the marriage consummated? Catherine insisted it was not, a claim backed by a papal dispensation which allowed her to marry Arthur's younger brother Henry, who became king in 1509. To this day, historians debate whether Catherine was telling the truth. But regardless, one thing is clear. Even as a teenager, she grasped the geopolitical stakes of her choices. She chose her words and her battles with immense care. Catherine and Henry VIII were married for 24 years, longer than all his other marriages combined. And during that time, Catherine was more than a wife. She was a political advisor, a cultural patron, and even a military leader. In 1513, when Henry was away fighting in France, he left Catherine as Regent of England, a role usually reserved for a male noble. She took her responsibilities seriously. When Scotland invaded England under King James IV, Catherine rallied troops, raised funds, and coordinated strategy for what would become the Battle of Flodden, one of England's greatest victories. Catherine, wearing armor over her gown, gave a rousing speech to the troops before they marched north. After James IV was killed, she ordered his bloodied cloak sent to Henry as a trophy. The Queen of England effectively helped orchestrate the death of a reigning king, while her own husband was abroad. Yet even as she ruled in public, her private life was full of sorrow. Catherine became pregnant at least 6 times, but only one child survived, Mary Tudor, later known as Bloody Mary. The others were either miscarried or died in infancy. Each loss was a personal tragedy and a political one. Henry, desperate for a male heir to secure the Tudor line, began to drift. He fixated on Anne Boleyn and claimed his marriage to Catherine was invalid, citing the Bible. If a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. But Catherine was having none of it. She refused to agree to the annulment. She refused to step aside. She refused to stop calling herself queen. For Catherine, this wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a spiritual war. At her core, she was a Catholic of unshakable conviction, molded by the faith of her mother Isabella and the militant Catholicism of the Spanish court. From childhood, she had been taught that marriage was a holy sacrament, indissoluble and ordained by God. The authority of the Pope was absolute. The vows she had made were eternal. She wasn't simply fighting for her crown. She was defending her soul. Accepting the annulment would have meant confessing to a sin she did not believe she committed, betraying both her faith and her conscience. That, to Catherine, was unthinkable. She wrote to the Pope, to her nephew Emperor Charles V, and to allies across Europe, making it clear she would rather lose her status, her comfort, even her child, than deny the sanctity of her marriage or bend the knee to a king over God. When summoned before a tribunal at Blackfriars in 1529, Catherine knelt before Henry and gave an impassioned speech declaring, "When ye had me at first, I take God to be my judge, I was a true maid." The courtroom fell silent. Even Henry had no response. It was a masterclass in moral defiance. Catherine was not just defending herself, she was defending the sanctity of marriage, the authority of Rome, and her daughter's legitimacy. But her resistance came at a cost. Henry, determined to have his way, broke with Rome and declared himself head of the Church of England, free to annul the marriage without the Pope's consent. He succeeded in divorcing Catherine, not through law or truth, but through sheer force of power. She was banished from court, separated from Mary, and exiled to the damp halls of Kimbolton Castle. Even then, she never acknowledged Anne Boleyn as queen. Even then, she signed letters as Catherine the Queen. And even in isolation, she inspired loyalty. The English people adored her. Ambassadors called her more beloved than any queen before her. She maintained her dignity, her faith, and her defiance until the very end. Catherine died on January 7th, 1536, likely from cancer. She was just 50 years old. On her deathbed, she penned a letter to Henry, heartbreaking in its grace. "My eyes desire you above all things. Forget not how good I was to you." She forgave him. She mourned him. She never stopped loving him. Henry, meanwhile, wore yellow, a colour of celebration, when he heard the news. Some say it was to mourn in the Spanish style. Others say it was relief. The truth? We'll never know. Catherine of Aragon was never just the first wife. She was a regent who helped aid in James IV's defeat, a patron of Juan Luis Vives, who wrote The Education of a Christian Woman, a Catholic icon who stood firm against an emerging Protestant regime, a symbol of resistance to tyranny and injustice. And though she lost her title, she won her legacy, unbending in spirit and unbreakable in resolve. Today, we recognize her not as a footnote, but as a formidable queen, a political pioneer, and one of the most compelling women of the Tudor age. Thank you for watching. If you found Catherine's story compelling, consider subscribing for more untold stories of powerful figures and the turning points that shaped the world. Who should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below.